Welcome to this explainer. Have you ever looked into a stranger's eyes and felt just completely certain that you understood exactly who they were and what they were thinking? We literally all do it. But what if everything you believe about reading other people is fundamentally flawed? Today, we're unpacking Malcolm Gladwell's Talking to Strangers, and we're going to discover why our built-in human compass is almost always pointing in the exact wrong direction. So, ask yourself this: can you really spot a liar? Take a second to really think about it. If we're being honest, most of us have a certain level of arrogance about this, don't we? We think a twitching eye, a little stutter, or a quick shift in posture is all we need to catch someone in a deception. But as you're about to see, our intuition is definitely not the superpower we think it is. In fact, it is frequently dead wrong. Part 1: The Stranger Problem. Okay, let's dive right into this. The first massive psychological concept Gladwell introduces is called the default to truth. By our very nature, human beings are literally hardwired to believe what other people tell us. We just don't start every interaction from a place of intense suspicion. Instead, we naturally assume the person sitting across from us is being honest. We default to believing them. And we'll actually keep believing them until we are confronted with absolutely overwhelming, undeniable evidence that they're lying. I mean, it takes a massive amount of proof to snap our brains out of this default state. Just think about your own daily life for a second, especially in your local community. We inherently trust our shopkeepers, our neighbors, even the workers who come right into our homes. If you go buy vegetables, you assume the vendor isn't actively trying to poison you, right? If you hire someone to fix your sink, you assume they're actually going to do the work. This default to truth isn't us being naive or stupid. It's the very fabric that holds all of our daily interactions together. But here is where we hit a really brilliant paradox. On the one hand, this default assumption of honesty is absolutely essential for a functioning, smooth society. We couldn't live together if we had to constantly interrogate every single motive of every single person we ever met. But on the flip side, it creates an absolute scammer's paradise. Scammers exploit this exact natural inclination to trust because they know our brains simply won't allow us to suspect them in the early stages of a con. Moving on to part 2, the transparency illusion. Now, this brings us to what's known as the illusion of transparency. This is the totally mistaken yet super widely accepted belief that a person's outward demeanor perfectly maps onto their true inner emotional state. Basically, we falsely expect real people to behave with incredibly predictable emotions. If someone is happy, we expect a big beaming smile. If someone is guilty or lying, well, we expect them to look nervous and avoid eye contact. We treat the human face like it's some perfectly calibrated emotional dashboard. But here's the catch. We are completely confusing television with reality. Think about it. Actors are literally trained to be perfectly transparent. They exaggerate every emotion so we, the audience, instantly know what they're feeling. Real people, though, we are entirely opaque. We're guided by deep-rooted cultural norms that teach us to hide or suppress our feelings. We mask our true emotions all the time out of politeness or social conditioning. So trying to read someone's true intentions just by looking at their face, it's incredibly difficult, if not totally impossible. And because we rely so heavily on this idea of transparency, we completely misjudge anyone who doesn't fit the mold. Gladwell calls these individuals mismatched people. These are folks whose inside emotions simply do not match their outside expressions. Just imagine a completely truthful person who happens to get a shaky voice when they speak, or someone who sweats profusely when they're anxious about being falsely accused. Because their expressions are mismatched, our flawed intuition immediately flags them as liars. You can probably see how this creates a highly dangerous dynamic in society. Relying only on body language leads us to some absolute catastrophic errors. Like, we might look at a nervous, socially awkward, innocent person and assume they're hiding something sinister. Or we see an introvert stumbling through a job interview and assume they just lack confidence. But on the flip side, a cold-blooded criminal might remain incredibly confident under pressure. Because that criminal looks calm, our intuition tells us, hey, they must be innocent. We end up punishing the nervous innocent and rewarding the calm criminal, all because of a simple mismatch in expression. All right, part 3, the coupling effect. To really understand strangers, we have to rethink character entirely through a concept called coupling. Coupling is the principle that human behaviors don't just spring out of nowhere. They are intensely and directly linked to very specific circumstances and environments. We tend to think that if someone is a quote-unquote bad person, they're going to do bad things no matter where they are.
But the reality is that people behave in highly specific ways based entirely on the situations they are placed in. Their behavior is strictly coupled to their environment.
So the crucial point here is that when we're judging a stranger, we absolutely have to factor in their immediate environment, the surrounding levels of poverty, and their specific situational circumstances. For example, if a neighborhood has a high crime rate, our flawed intuition might whisper that everyone living there is just a criminal by nature, but coupling reveals that the crime is inextricably linked to the context of that place. If you change the environment and alter those situational circumstances, the behavior of the people changes right along with it. Context is what drives behavior, not just some innate, unchangeable character.
This brings us to part 4, limits of interaction. Now listen to this really profound realization from the book. Judges who met criminals for bail decisions actually made worse choices than those who only read their files. Just let the gravity of that sink in for a second. We are talking about highly trained legal professionals, yet the data shows that actively meeting a stranger, bringing them into a room and talking to them face to face actually confused the judge's decision-making process. The professionals who never even met the criminals, the ones who only looked at the cold, hard facts in their files, actually made significantly better, safer choices.
So, why does meeting someone face-to-face actually lead to worse results? Well, it's because human interaction instantly introduces all of our biases. The exact second we meet someone, that illusion of transparency kicks in. We start judging their nervous twitch, their mismatched expressions, or their calm demeanor. We become way too overconfident in our own flawed intuition. Meeting them doesn't give us clarity. It actually throws up a smokescreen of confusing social cues that completely overwrites the objective facts.
Which leads us to part 5, rethinking how we judge.
So what does this all mean? How do we actually fix our flawed wiring? Well, first, we have to actively doubt our intuition. We need to recognize that our gut feelings are heavily influenced by those optical illusions and mismatched expressions we talked about. Second, we have to avoid rushing into judgments. Give things time and look for objective facts rather than just relying on someone's demeanor. And most importantly, we need to lead with context and deep empathy. Remember, defaulting to truth is not a weakness. It's actually the vital strength of our entire society. But to protect ourselves, we really must pair that beautiful trust with caution and a much sharper understanding of context. I want to leave you with a really crucial question to chew on today. The next time you judge a stranger, will you simply trust your eyes, or will you look deeper into the context? Accepting the beautifully complex limits of our own perception is really the very first step toward truly understanding the strangers we share this incredible world with. Thank you so much for watching this explainer. Keep questioning what you see and never stop learning.